Welcome to Church Planting and Renewal Conversations. I'm Chris Vogel, Director of NXTGEN Pastors, and I serve M&A as the Director of Ecosystem Development. When you hear the word coach, what comes to mind? For many, it's the athletic coach, someone who helps the team to win. For those who have signed up for this webinar, you might be thinking a little bit differently. More likely, think along the lines of a life or professional coach, someone who helps you achieve the goals and objectives you have in your work, specifically in our case, in ministry. Well, either way, a coach is someone who gets you from A to B, and that is part of the word's origin. The word coach is derived from the Hungarian town of Kocs, who 500 years ago became known as the best manufacturer of carriages in Europe. Soon, the town name became synonymous with any large four-wheeled covered carriage. In fact, Hungarians still refer to their cars as coachy. Well, as church leaders, we often find ourselves coaching pastors and leaders in ministry, helping them to get from A to B. Well, this fall, we've had several webinars to discuss coaching, but this time we're going to go briefly touch on coaching skills needed for ministry. So what does it mean to be a coach, and what skills should you be considering? Well, with us again today is Vincent Tauriello, is M&A's coaching specialist, and we're also joined by Alyson McEvoy, who is a woman of faith in Jesus Christ. Her BA is from Gordon College, her MBA from the Université de Metz in France. And after 15 years as managing a global corporate teams in 2013, she was called to a supportive role as a professionally trained leadership coach. She was a university adjunct professor of leadership and organizational behavior in Boston, and now focuses on supporting faith-based leaders through individual, group, and team coaching and facilitating at her business, Measure What Matters. Also, Alyson coaches in English, French, and Portuguese. So for any of you that might need one of those, there's another opportunity. Well, welcome, Vin. Tell us today a bit more about our topic.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. And welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Yes, coaching isn't only an excellent a way to help leaders grow and develop personally and professionally, and as Chris pointed out, to get from point A to point B. But it's also an important set of skills leaders can learn and practice to better serve others. Ministry is about people, and we lead and influence people primarily through our conversations. So in this webinar, Coaching Skills for Ministry, we will consider how to improve the quality of your conversations and the impact of your ministry on the people you serve by employing coaching skills, or at least some of them. And let me just say a couple of things about how coaching skills might help you. First of all, it can help you solve problems without having all the answers. That should be a refreshing thought. Secondly, coaching skills can help you to learn how to ask powerful questions that stimulate awareness and creative thinking in your hearer. Thirdly, coaching skills can help you listen actively, which has to do with engaging others in a more impactful and less directive conversation. Fourth, it can help you create more laser focus on what's most important in the ministry and in your strategy, in your efforts. And then lastly, it can help you support others to take responsibility for themselves and take actions that move them forward.
Great. Well, good. Well, we have a poll. We like to do polls, and it kind of helps get you who are attending to think about and engage. And the poll here we're going to launch is dealing with the coaching skills themselves, really asking the question, which of the following, we have 5 different choices here, which of the following would you say are most important for ministry today? And so launching the poll now, take a moment, and it's about solving problems without having all the answers, being able to ask powerful questions that stimulate creative thinking, listening actively to engage others in a more impactful and directive way. That's the other ones that he mentioned, creating that laser focus on what's most important. And then supporting others take responsibility for themselves, take actions moving forward. So as take a moment doing that now. It's great. Answer some of these questions, kind of see where you're at, what you're thinking. Right now, we're fairly evenly divided among all of them. I didn't see all the above option there. Maybe should have added that. Okay. A pretty good participation there. So what, Alyson and Vin, what do you think? What we're seeing here, the one that got the most was listen actively to engage others in a more impactful, less directive way. That is among those who are with us today. That seems to be what they're thinking.
So that's the top result.
That's the top. Oh, let me end the poll so you guys can see it. I'm sorry. I'm looking at everything. Okay. I see all. I know all.
Yes,
we'll learn.
Listening actively.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the close second is supporting others. Yeah. What were you saying there, Alyson?
Yeah, no, I'm not surprised at all by these results. I mean, those are two that all organizations need. And I really think that, listening is the cornerstone habit or the key skill to coaching, right?
Mm-hmm.
Probably has that in common with your ministry, right? Listening truly being the most important way to start any conversation, right?
Yeah.
So I would say that, not going in directive, there's a time and a place for it, but we also need to listen to how others are responding when we're directing. So, right. So I would say that giving the opportunity for more to come out of a conversation, we want to maybe lean off of being directive when we can, and lean into listening to create more mutual and more creative solutions.
That is a tough one for people that have been trained to have all the answers, especially for pastors. I think we're paid by the words we speak, and so the more I say, the more valuable I am. I'm speaking in jest, but that's how often. And so that is an interesting one. It's great to recognize that active listening to understand instead of listening to speak.
Yeah.
It's mutual, right? It's about relationship. And so when we listen well, our response and our words and our direction can be even more valuable. So carving out a space to step back can feel uncomfortable for sure for leaders in all arenas. And this is when you discern, which skill you want to pull out, whether it's directive or if it's coaching.
Yeah. And I thought it was interesting that the close second, the 30%, was supporting others in their discovery and action steps. Really, really encouraging to see that as an important aspect of the ministry.
That's great. Well, good.
Well, I think it might be helpful. I'll share a little bit about how I came into a better awareness or understanding of this whole idea in terms of a theology of coaching. I was taking a course, and my professor assigned me to do a history of coaching, and I began to do that. But then it also led me, because of the way my mind works, to think about, is there any history of it in the scriptures? And I was so surprised about what I found. Just the whole aspect of God asking questions of his children. There was this thread that really started to pop out for me, and how he values the image that he's placed in us, not by giving us all the answers, which he obviously has, right? So, for example, in the garden, where are you? Clearly, God knew where they were. Right after Cain, had that problem with his brother, where is your brother? God knew where his brother was. You think about Jonah when he's so angry, that God decided to save Nineveh. And he knew that God was going to do that. That's why he ran away in the first place. And God asks him, do you do well to be angry? There's that long series of questions God applies to Job, chapter after chapter. Were you there when I laid earth's foundations, and so on? And then you see this happening in the New Testament as well, to the man at the pool who has been ill for 38 years. Do you want to be made well? What a question, right? To the woman caught in adultery, where are your accusers? Or to the rich man, why are you calling me good? And so you see this thread of God asking questions because he values the image he's placed in us. He's looking to draw out of us what's there so we can have the awareness, and so we can take responsibility for what's really going on, and so we can turn to God for the help that we need and take the actions to move ourselves forward in line with his will. And so, that whole study really opened my eyes in a big way. I'm sure you remember this, Alyson, to some degree, as my professor.
I remember the beauty of that research, because it's so true, and it may be a lost art, right? But this is one way that God shows us to draw out the virtues in people, right? That he's instilled. So coaches are not all knowing like God, right? Clearly. And we don't need to know the answers to the questions, right? However, we're asking poignant questions that will draw out an acceptance of the current reality, right? And for someone to answer it clearly, whether it's painful or not, whether they want to really answer it because it's uncomfortable, but to get that clarity of where they're at, only from there can they begin to move forward.
Mm-hmm. It makes me think in a cultural sense, that issue of asking questions to get people to think and to do the internal processing. Just wondering, do you see any challenges that we have culturally to do that? Any reticence to either ask questions or to be asked questions?
The first one that I find is time management. I would say culturally, we're fast, get it done yesterday. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work.
Yeah. So if you go into coaching, think I'm gonna get a coach or be a coach so I can get the answers, so I don't have to spend the time doing the hard work.
Yeah. There are people that sign up for that, but that's not what coaching is.
Right.
And as we know, there are no shortcuts, right? Mm-hmm. If you really want to achieve something 5 years from now, you start today,
Mm-hmm. I think perhaps another cultural issue, particularly amongst leaders, is something you said earlier, Chris, just the expectation that, you went to seminary and you are, the degreed person, so you should have the answer. So what are you asking me questions for? Just tell me what the answer is. Tell me what to do. So I think there is some cultural expectation and pressure there. Yeah.
I know in working with more specifically church planters who get coaches, fortunately not a lot, but a few of them had said, yeah, I met twice with a coach, and 2 1-hour sessions, and it didn't make anything better. It's just like, if you're expecting in 2 1-hour sessions, then you're expecting them to tell you do this, do that, and go on your way. And that again is not coaching.
A consultant can give advice in, maybe in 2 hours, but that's not what coaching is. So there's that distinction there. And in the first 2 sessions, you are establishing trust in the relationship, creating that psychological safety so you can be really honest with where you're at and where the gaps are, what you need in order to move forward. And having the willingness to see that really needs a lot of trust. So it goes hand in hand.
Oh, that's good. That helps.
Right on.
Okay. Other thoughts about the kind of the place of coaching, the where, when, and how that these skills can be cultivated, utilized for effective ministry?
would just
Yeah,
add
thank
to
you.
what Vinny said. I'm sorry, Vinny, but what you said
Go ahead.
earlier about seminary and, having all the answers, there's that real having to overcome that, right? And I think coaching can help people to overcome that, and to humbly and courageously move forward as a leader needs to, for God's will to happen. And I also think that they are selling themselves short of what else. They're not only equipped with knowledge coming out of seminary, but they're equipped with the mindset and the discernment, and that they can bring to coaching and to anybody, right? They're bringing so much more than just the knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's their capacity to hold the conversations. It's their capacity to draw out and discern what is good to move forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I just want to say that we just invite our participants, if there are questions that come up or comments you want to make, please feel free to place those in the chat box. We'll do our best to interact with them. Chris will be keeping an eye on them. In terms of the question about where and when and how coaching skills can be helpful, I think one area that comes to my mind is when people are trying to figure out their calling in life, or where they want to go, maybe a place of service within the church, or maybe just where they want to go out in the world in terms of their role and their calling. It's a great set of skills to help people come to terms with that and to come to a better understanding of that, asking questions as opposed to giving them the answers. That would be one, I think, really helpful place where coaching skills could be employed.
Absolutely, Vinny.
There's a question that, in picking up on, Alyson, what you had said, between the difference between a consultant and a coach. Someone's asking, can you elaborate on that difference? How do you determine which you may need?
Yeah, sure. So both a coach, a competent coach, and a competent consultant would come in and assess where you're at, either you or your team, depending on what the hire is for. And a consultant will work confidentially, like the coach will work confidentially, but then give you a strategy. They'll take their education and their experience and give you the strategic plan. This is what you need to do. I've identified the gaps. This is the solution. This is how you do it. Go execute.
Mm-hmm.
And then you pay them and they're gone. With coaching, you can sit and use them in strategic planning based on what matters most to you. You can do that in a coaching session. However, they're there to help you walk through the best process to execute. They're with you hand in hand through the execution to hold you accountable to what you said in the beginning you wanted to do in a compassionate way, hold you accountable to the strategic plan, and help you pivot and help you modify the strategic plan as needed in the execution. And where your blind spots are. We hate to admit it, but we all have blind spots, and it's very helpful to have a coach to help you see where you're missing things. So that happens one and done with consulting primarily. Perhaps depending on the contract, they come in quarterly to check, but it's not common that they would be with you for a long time on the execution.
So yeah. I almost see it as though, and again, not to put them against one or the other, but you could get a consultant, and then I just know so often we get the information and get stuck on a shelf, that the implementation doesn't necessarily happen. And that's where the coach is going to help, holding you a bit more accountable, help you walk through the implementation of what you desire to do, whether you have a consultant or not. But
yeah, and I love the way Alyson made that distinction. And I would add to that it's not that a coach can't help you with the strategic plan, but it would be more co-created. They wouldn't go into the back room and figure it out and then come out and give you the answer and then help you execute it. But you would come to terms of it together, in a co-created kind of way,
Vinny,
collaboratively. Yeah.
Excellent highlight, Vinny. I think that's the critical distinction there, Vinny. It's also a philosophical fundamental difference why that's done. We firmly believe in coaching that it's better to do it that way, because you are in the situation, you have the wellspring of the wisdom. So you know better than any consultant. So we're there to help draw it out, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And in addition to that, to being able to do that piece, there's also greater ownership. When you come to it yourself, as opposed to a consultant coming in and giving you the answer, when you come into the realization of what that strategic plan needs to be, it's yours. And you're much more apt to do it with all your, gusto than if someone, drops it from the sky and says, this is it,
Excellent, Vinny. And just to highlight on that, on the number 5 in the poll, supporting others to take responsibility, that is it in a nutshell. Get them to build it, get them their buy-in.
Mm-hmm.
Right on.
So then there's always that person, and this kind of gets to the next question. You're working in a situation where someone needs to recognize or realize a real problem that the person to date has not seen clearly. The three of you have some recommended good questions. So what are some of those questions or skills you ask the person to help draw that out?
Well, if it's a goal that they're not achieving, you can simply ask them what's happening that is getting in the way of achieving this goal.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be one question, what's getting in the way, right? And you listen to them, and then you help them to see, maybe they have some blind spots on some things, but it says recognize or realize the problem that the person, he hasn't seen clearly. Yeah, rather than telling them, you would try to get them to explain what is it that they see, mm-hmm. and then offer up some suggestions of what they might not see,
Mm-hmm.
Well, what if this person actually means this, in the factoring of this, and how would that change your vision on this situation? And so offering up new insights and new perspective to them in an invitation type of way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like the way you put that, Alyson, like looking at it from a different angle. So, to help them to look at it from a different point of view or a different perspective. And if they were to look at it that way, how would that change, the way they behave or comment or whatever it is that you're working on?
Yeah, that's great, Vinny.
Yeah.
It kind of comes down then to, again, the questions that are being asked and how you ask them. Just because you have a question mark at the end of a sentence doesn't mean it's a good question.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about powerful questions.
That's great, Vinny.
Yeah, great question. Great lead in there, Chris. Yeah, so you're right. A question is not just there are questions and there are powerful questions, and I think the big difference is an open question versus a closed question. Closed questions are yes or no answers. They might be you might start with the why. Which is going to put someone on their heels and maybe start to become more defensive. An open question would be more what question, so that there's the mind is able to open and think more clearly. It's not going to be as defensive, and it becomes more expansive. So that's where I would start.
So I like that. So a what question will be more helpful than a why.
Mm-hmm.
Is that an accurate way of putting it?
Yeah. So as opposed to saying, so why did you do that?
Yeah.
It's already you're basically saying, I think you messed up here. As opposed to, so what went into your decision, to do that? What precipitated that, or what was going on at the time that, mm-hmm. that you chose to move in that direction? Talk a little bit about that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great.
As opposed to what were you thinking? That's not a helpful question. But understand.
That's right. Okay. Yeah, good clarification there, Chris.
Yeah, because the why gets to some deeper motives that I think it is harder to plumb the depths of that.
Mm-hmm.
It also offers at the foundation of the relationship, because in every conversation there's a relationship, whether it's someone you just met or not, and it's always trust. So you're looking to not put the person on the defense so you can get the best out of the conversation. You may think you already know everything the other person's going to say. However, you need to be freshly present to hear their answer and give them that opportunity to express something. And so you're creating the psychological safety so that their brain actually can turn on and think new thoughts and give you a fresh, honest answer in a safe environment in that trusted relationship, in that conversation. So it really is about, I'm genuinely curious because I trust you. I know you're resourceful. I know you're creative. I trust you. I trust you. I trust your ability. You're in this role for the right reasons. And I'm really curious to know and understand what was your thinking about so that we can move forward here.
Yeah, that's so helpful, Alyson. And that's such a good clarification. In addition, I would say one of the things to keep in mind when you're asking a question to see if it's powerful or not, the goal of a powerful question is not for the hearer to gain better clarity or understanding. It's for the speaker. It's for the in this case, the client. So the client is to increase their clarity, their insight, their awareness. You're not asking questions because you want to know more about this person, but to help them to understand their thoughts, to help them become clear on what's really going on. What are the opportunities before them? Where could they move forward in this? These kinds of things.
Question here from Yasmin. If we try to speak on something or some specific thing to confront, because we're discerning something there, is that advisable to do? So, okay, you're coaching someone, and there are some choices that you just see, and you are asking, what's the outcome of this? What are you seeing happening? And all the while, the sirens are going off in your head of danger. How do you, as a coach, balance that out and navigate? At times, it can be a tightrope because you've got to have a fiduciary responsibility to the client that they don't do something really stupid. Again, we're not talking moral, issues or high illegality, but how would you help someone if they're thinking about coaching, how to navigate that part?
Yeah. So if I'm understanding the question, Yasmin's question, if we try to speak on some specific thing to confront because we discern something is, it's not advisable to do, if you're in a pastoral caring role, there is a place for coaching and there's a place for just gently confronting someone if you see something is of danger or concern. Professionally, as a coach, our ethical standards require us to, yes, there's confidentiality, but if there is some concern of harm, to withhold that would be unkind and unethical. And so, the coaching is not always the tool to grab for. Sometimes a gentle confrontation is what's required. I don't know if that answered the question, but
Vinny, I think you did a really good job. And this is, coaching skills are simply a tool. They're not the always go-to, right? And you have learned how to discern, right? You learned listening to God's voice, and you're helping people. If you've discerned something, then that's important to act on. I would simply offer, in best practice in communication, it's to affirm and confirm. So you're talking first to affirm the person, right? You're affirming them. There's a love, trust relationship there. And there is a confirmation. I heard you say this. Is that accurate? Because I also heard you say this, and this means this to me, right? And so logically, this and this together means this. And then I discern that, right? So you want to affirm and confirm, and then call them out on something really important.
That's so helpful, Alyson. That 1-2 punch, if you will. That's really good.
From love.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're saying affirm and then confirm, right?
Yes, affirm the person, because it's when we ever talk about behavior or things that need to change, we can never be talking about so much about the person. It's about what they're deciding to do. So not bringing into question the trust in the person, right? Unless that's the issue. But then you would explain that. You'd affirm, did you do this? I hear you say this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Confirm and then affirm, and then speak the truth of the discernment.
Yeah. No, that helps. Great. Thank you. As we're moving forward, we're taking the questions. Those are great. And so we're going to keep kind of weaving back and forth in this, as conversations often are. They're not linear necessarily. So, Vinny, you were talking about the asking to gain in the powerful questions is to clarify insight, awareness in that other person. Are there any things else you'd want to pick up on that that's helpful, or have we covered that pretty well?
Yeah, I think we've covered it pretty well. I mean, it is indeed a skill. I remember one of the assignments I was given early on was to find someone to practice with. And, so I would ask questions for 30 minutes and then we'd switch and the other person would ask questions. And it's fascinating because you realize just how terrible you are at this thing. And that how easy it is to go into advice giving or you talking about yourself, and so on and so forth. It's just fascinating. I thought I was a fantastic listener until I began to work on it.
One of the best training that I was able to experience a number of years ago was in a group setting using sometimes called tech groups or other things like that, in which you have one person with an issue and 8 people asking questions. No advice, 1 hour, just ask questions.
That's great.
And I often would sit there with a pen, and there was 1 or 2 guys who were just excellent asking that's a good question. So learning not about that issue, but also watching others asking good questions and go, that's a great way of saying it.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. And some of it, when we're talking about the what and the why, there's a certain issue of neuroscience that goes behind this. Right, Allison? Talk on that a little bit, because we think we're coaching and we're just making it more difficult for people.
We can. So it's critically important to understand the factors that go into creating psychological safety on the brain. So the neuroscience that's out is really, we're built, the brain has been built primarily to shut down within a minute. If it doesn't feel safe, it'll look to protect itself. So it's not going to be open to what we would call being explorative or into discovery and to becoming creative and innovative. So the questions need to be very much creating trust and curiosity and exploration. So we're looking to discover. It's almost as if we're moving into a place of play, right? It's you're really in a state where you're free to be creative. So it's not only that we're gaining clarity and awareness, but we can come up with some pretty wonderful ideas when we're open to it. So it's to create a space where you can imagine new things that you weren't able to imagine without your coach.
Yeah, so important that idea of space. And in light of that, just in terms of powerful questions, one of the things that I did so poorly initially was what's called stacking questions. You ask like 3-4 questions in a row instead of one, and then giving space. I mean, if it's a good question, then just leave it alone and give that person some time to think about it and formulate their question. But I early on, when I didn't know what I was doing, I would ask 3-4. I thought I was doing great, asking a lot of great questions. No one has any time to think or respond.
Yeah, I worked with a coach once, and he talked about divergent thinking, helping in the area of divergent thinking. The name of his group was, I think, Center for Play and Exploration. And I'm thinking, I'm at that point, I'm pushing 60, one, especially in the circles I'm in, divergent thinking is a scary thing. We don't do divergent thinking. And I don't play. But it was it was a mental exercise that was so refreshing because we just learned. He helped me think through things in a more creative fashion. And it was a safe place to do that.
And I would just caution, as I would anybody, you want to know who's coaching you. You're creating a safe space. To us, that means that it's people with virtuously informed imagination, right? And it's right. You just want to, you are opening up what God has given you. It's a gift. It's a talent. The imagination, it's, as you all know very well, it's clearly something we need to call upon. The vision needs to be cast, and you do that with your imagination.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the gift to do that, and it's to be done in a virtuously informed imagination.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's such a helpful clarification.
Yeah.
Also.
Yeah, and so for those who are listening or thinking about it, I'd like to look into coaching. That's going to be an important aspect. This is not free form. Even if you're asking questions still have a directive aspect to it, and you had better be clear on your own trajectory for yourself.
Yeah.
Especially.
And I would say, Chris, hand in glove with powerful questions is active listening. I mean, that's the other key skill that is learned and practiced and employed in coaching. And what active listening is it, as I said, it's a skill where you're focusing on what the other person is saying, what they're saying, and what they're not saying, to fully understand what is being communicated in the context of their world and their life, and to support their own self-expression and self-discovery. So it's quite different from just showing interest.
Okay.
That's quite different from just nodding and saying,
Vinny, that is, if we could just shorten it to that one sentence that you just said, that would be the huge highlight of this meeting. It truly is listening. It's about listening, and culture goes against us fine-tuning our listening skills. And we have a habit of thinking it's easier that we already know what the person's going to say. So we're going to think about what our response is going to be while they're talking, and we're preparing. Or it might be some ego jumping in. I want to sound smart, or I want to be the leader. But it's not helpful to you or to them. So if you can cultivate being fully present, right, to be listening actively to one little thing they're going to say new, it can help inform something great, actually.
And I would think that part of that active listening is going to be having for yourself a sense of being okay with silence.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Because again, I asked a question. Well, but similar to what you were saying, Vinny, about stacking questions, but some of it, I ask a question and I expect an immediate answer. And some of us we process by sitting there. Some of us process by just start talking, and you got to understand, I would think, the person you're coaching, how do they process and create that safe place for them? Yeah.
Good point. It's a really good point. And what I would say in terms of, some of the key elements of active listening, first and foremost is don't assume or understand when someone says something, that what that meaning actually is. I think another piece is just being curious. Be curious about what they mean by what they said, but then also be curious about what else is being communicated in what they said. Is there more to it there? Is there something deeper? Maybe there's not, but just being curious about that. And then the third aspect I would say would be ask clarifying questions that explore or help explore the deeper meaning of what's being said. So, for example, recently I was talking to a leader, and the leader said, I want to be a better leader. Now, if I was just thinking, just as friends, two people, I'd be like, great, me too, something like that. But what I asked was, so what do you mean that you want to be a better leader? And then what followed totally surprised me. I would not have known that that's what the meaning was had I not asked that question. And I think it was extremely helpful for that leader to be able to hear that out loud and to think it through and to become clearer about why that's so important to that leader.
Yeah. Great.
Different words mean different things to different people.
Right on.
And I love that you said, Vinny, we cannot assume. We can't assume anything. And we are there to take the time that's needed in the conversation. Either our schedules are, our calendars have meaningful conversations, or they just aren't. And so that's who's deciding that. That's us.
Mm-hmm.
We're making it meaningful. We need to understand what the other person means. Yeah. That's so great. That's so great.
So I'm wondering what questions might be emerging for the participants. Any questions on these questions, or listening, or anything else that was said?
Well, while they're thinking through those, just walk us through an outline of coaching. Obviously you don't just sit down and start peppering with questions. What is there a pattern that they should begin to think about what coaching might be? And again, in a half hour or an hour, we can't say this is what coaching is, but just giving the framework for them to pursue further training and instruction in this.
Yeah, that's a great question, Chris. There are lots of models. There are lots of outlines out there. I've developed my own. I'll just share it. There's nothing spectacular about it. I call it the 4 C's of a coaching conversation. The first C is connecting. Just connecting as people. How have you been? What's going on? Valuing that this is a fellow human being, created in the image of God. Let's connect. Let's be human beings together here for a moment. If you already have an ongoing relationship and you've met a few times, part of connecting might be, so how did you do with what you said you were going to do last time, or something like that? Or, what's it been like, with that challenge you mentioned last time? So there's some continuity. But so the first C is connecting. The second C is clarifying. So what do you want to talk about today? We could talk about everything, but we should probably talk about something. So what is that something that would be most helpful? What would you like to focus our conversation on today? So gaining some clarity on that, and then asking a few clarifying questions before you delve into it. Like, why is that important to you to discuss today? What kind of an outcome would you like to walk away with if we talk through that in a way that would be, helpful to you? So connecting, then clarifying. The third C would be creating. Here I'm thinking about creating awareness. So not for me as the coach, but for the client, greater awareness as to what's going on. What are the issues? What are the obstacles? What are the opportunities? Or what's going on in you that this is happening now? What does this mean for you? So creating awareness and also creating action steps. You want to be able to boil it down at some point to, okay, so what will move this forward? What's step 1? What's step 2? What's step 3? If you're able to do that. And then the last C is closing. And by that, I don't mean just simply saying goodbye and oh, look at the time, that kind of thing, but bringing the conversation to a close, particularly with the idea of, so what would you say you've gained today? What new insight or new step forward do you have now that you didn't have 30 minutes or 40 minutes ago? What was the highlight of our conversation you want to be sure to remember and implement, things like that? So that's sort of just a very general outline of 4 C's of a coaching conversation that helps me to stay on track so I don't get lost and I can serve well those who I'm coaching.
Yeah, and
Alyson,
I was going to say that takes it beyond a conversation to coaching, having some structure, and that's a good place to start. Yeah, Alyson, your thoughts?
I think that's a great model, and I think that the model that each coach uses will be unique to them, and that's why relationship is important when you select your coach. Also, I would simply say that what Vinny said was so smart, because if you're not and some coaches don't do this, they forget at the very beginning of the meeting, we've got, let's say, we've only got 35 minutes today, Chris, in our coaching session. What will be most helpful to you? What will serve you most when we walk out of here in the next 35 minutes that you're going to walk away with? And we get them to define that. And that's what Vinny said. And that's great. That's really important, and hold them to that. So we use that, we get there in 35 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think what you were pointing out, Chris, is that it's not just a conversation, it's an intentional conversation to be of most service to that person.
Yeah. Long term. So if I don't go into one session, if I'm just looking over, like generally I only coach somebody for a period of 6 months to a year or two. I've had some where there's like a 90-day, 100-day goal that they want to achieve. The first thing that I do is clearly identify and articulate their values, their unique values. So when we know their value system, we know how they're going to operate, identify their talents and their strengths, get really articulate on what their talents and strengths are, and see if there's anything a skill that they want to be working on. So that can be a part of the plan. But then I put together, okay, what are your roles and what is God's purpose for each of those roles in your life? And really identifying God's will in your life. This gives you peace of mind. If you've got this clearly identified in each of your roles, and you've got goals for each of your roles, it really identifying a written plan, an annual development plan, a clear path plan is what I call it, then they really can rest assured that they're aligned with their virtues and their values. They're aligned to God's will in their life, and they've got a plan and a strategy. So coaching helps you lift yourself up to see around the corners, and so we're here to help you be prepared for what's coming.
Jenny asked the question specifically of you, Alyson. Is our coach, what type of coaching model does Alyson use?
Well, I have been certified through the International Coach Federation, and there are 11 core competencies, which I abide by, and their code of ethics, which I abide by. But really, I am a values-based coach, so I will hold people compassionately accountable to each session to their values. So, and I call it out and I articulate. So the way you held that conversation, I see this, and this value. You see what I'm saying? So I'm heavily values based as a coach. And I would say, because I come from corporate and a strategic planning background, it's really fine tuning your execution. I firmly believe that your morning routine is critical. And so fine tuning your morning routine for the season of life that you're in and your purpose, really how you're getting your energy, is important spiritually, physically, intellectually, right? Financially, understanding all of these things. There are some drainers, energy drainers, and some energy nourishment. And I fine tune that for the person. So that's how I operate. Look at the whole person, look at the roles, where they're putting their talents into what roles, set clear goals, and then map out a strategy for the year.
Good.
And if I could,
good stuff, Alyson. Good stuff.
Powerful questions. I just want to recommend this book if anyone's thinking about, learning more. This is a really small book that I can recommend for learning more powerful questions, or an approach to learning powerful questions.
And there's some great exercises. There's like a 10-week of asking exercise. You team up with somebody and you practice asking questions for 10 weeks straight with the person. You just switch roles, and what a great exercise to do.
There's the link.
Excellent.
For the book. Yeah.
And Vinny's a trained, skilled coach, both in individual and in teams. And as ICF certified coach, there's certain core competencies. And, if people are interested, Vinny and I could do something and walk people through what the core competencies are of a coach. That obviously would be it would take an hour, and that would be the intention of it. But we'd be more than happy to offer that to people if they're interested in taking a deep dive into what it takes to become, a more professional coach.
Right on.
Super.
Can express interested in that already? And he had asked the question about the I'm following through here. You gave that outlet, let's just say 1 hour outline, Vinny, of connecting, clarifying, creating, and closing. You're describing that in a, again, simplified version here, but that could almost be the trajectory for your coaching that person, because I would think you're going to be heavier on the connecting at the front end of the time. You would do it in each session, but is there a trajectory that if you're working with somebody for 6, 9 months, a year, you might see that also as an arc? Is that a fair?
Yeah, to some degree, although, yeah, at the outset, I've created a form that, to help a client begin to think about the whole series goals. Okay. So if we're going to work for 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, I have questions that help a client become clear about where do they want to be in 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. Mm-hmm. And then you work backwards from that and start to plot the course throughout. Yeah. That's good.
And go ahead, Alyson.
Yeah, I just, and coming back to the purpose of today's talk, once you start practicing those powerful questions and you're observing how people are responding around you, I encourage people to take a journal and note, like, what was their response? Oh, I tried this new powerful question. Mm. How did people respond? How could I potentially have formulated it differently or better for the future? And it just gives, when you do take the time to journal that learning down, you'll create more opportunity for yourself to improve and to understand what people are saying. The journaling piece creates an extra space for you to that. It's just really an anchor so that you'll continue doing it as well.
Yeah, that part of the learning cycle is so important. You have the information, then you practice it, but then to reflect, is so important before you learn something new. Yeah.
Well, good. Stephen Cooper asks, talk about the wisdom of a 35-minute coaching versus 60 or 90 minutes. What do you find for yourselves to be the most effective way of doing this?
I do both. I think there's a place for both. It kind of depends upon the person, and what they want to get out of it, and their commitment. I'd rather have someone be fully present for 30 minutes than half present for 60. So it really is an individual choice thing. I don't think there's a better one. What I will say though is infrequent coaching sessions I find to be pretty unhelpful. So if I would not want to meet with someone once a month. I just find that's too much time elapses. It's hard to get momentum. So I have one client who I do meet every other for 30 minutes. I've had clients that meet 3 weeks on for 30 and 1 week off. And then I more commonly I have clients that meet twice a month for an hour each time. What would you add some to that, Alyson?
Well, I think that was well said, Vinny. And I think that the cadence really does depend on what you're looking to accomplish and the personalities. So the measurement there would be, are you tracking? Are you moving forward? And that would be how you would evaluate it. I generally work twice a month with people. And if you're doing 30 minutes, it can be done. It really depends on if you've already established the relationship and the real clarity of the goals and what they need to hold themselves accountable. If you're working on mindset shift and really working on a behavior change, it usually needs to be the full 50 minutes. Yeah. But if you're holding on accountability on execution, and it can be done in 30.
Great. So I would love if each participant wouldn't mind putting in the chat box what's standing out to you today from the webinar. What is the highlight? What is the takeaway that you are finding at this point as we're kind of coming to a close? And while you're doing that, I would just also offer a complimentary 30-minute call to explore if coaching or learning coaching skills would be a good next step for you. I think there's a link that we could put in the chat box as well that you can use to sign up. And I'd be happy to meet with you for those 30 minutes and be of service to you.
So yeah, so if someone is interested to explore what might it mean to be trained as a coach, having more of that professional training, that would be a good place to have that kind of conversation of clarifying what kind of coach they're talking about and how that could be. Okay, well, great.
And also at the end of this webinar, I believe in the next 24 hours, an email will go out with my email and Alyson's email on it. And you can also respond to both or one of us and let us know if you are interested in some coaching skills class or something like that. And then Alyson and I can discuss how we might offer that, and we can go from there. So yeah, we just want you to feel free to reach out if you're interested.
We need to create environments that carve out, the ability for others to slow down and to listen to one another, right? So I think coaching creates a space for gaining perspective that leads to better potential and more possibilities out of the conversation. So it's something enjoyable. While it is in the beginning, learning not to stack, learning to be fully present, not to be thinking, but once it's gained, it really can be a way of giving you peace in your day and in the conversation, because you're in the heart of the conversation.
Good.
I'm seeing this comment by Stephen here. Says, your comments about the importance of listening is so powerful. I think listening is love. And when it's done well, a listening coach can show people that God loves them.
Oh, that's great. Such a value there, something that we so much need. As we've said before, we're not in a context, a culture that does a lot of listening and exploring and providing that safe space to be able to think and process what's going on.
Another one highlight was the 4 C's were a tangible way to make this real. And then I hold people compassionately accountable to that person's own values was a powerful statement that Alyson made.
Yeah. I love that phrase, compassionately accountable. We sometimes think they're at odds, but done properly, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
It is a loving thing to do.
They're not at odds.
No.
We're intended to be together.
Yeah, exactly.
And I would also offer, when we're, not to be judgmental, right? We're holding people and to not be judgmental, to have instead compassionate curiosity.
No. Well, great. Well, thank you so much. This has been very helpful, and those of you who were able to join us, it's been good. Our next time will be on December 8th. Because of Thanksgiving and everything else, won't be meeting on Wednesdays, but we'll have the last one for this year. Actually, will be December 8th, and that will be with Auxilio Partners. Talking about the business of your church. Auxilio provides a lot of really important accounting and other features for churches. And in some ways, when you talk about strategic planning, they can help with that as well. But we're going to be talking to them, and it's not just for church planters, but for all of our churches. And so once again, Vinny, Alyson, thank you so much for your time. And for all that were able to join us. And so until the next time, Lord bless, and we will see you again on the M&A Conversations for Church Planting and Renewal. God bless.
Thank you all for coming. Thanks, Chris.